Hey, one of the most fun things about watching Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed growing up was recognizing the monsters and villains from the actual show and seeing them come to life. Some of them looked a little less accurate, like the zombie and cotton candy glob, but there were two that were well done. But as a kid, I totally had no idea what they were from the first time I watched the movie. That's because one of the episodes they featured in didn't get released on home video at all until 2013, 9 years later. So today, let's look at those two prominent monsters that were unleashed, but might be lesser known in the overall canon: the Pterodactyl ghost that started off the movie, and the one-eyed aliens known as the Skeleton Men that chased Scooby and Shaggy. Hang in there, Scooby-Doo is the third episode of the Scooby-Doo Show Season 2. The season famously never released in full on home video. The episode originally aired September 24th, 1977, and didn't make it to home video until September 10th, 2013. Despite its lack of availability, it was immortalized even further when its Pterodactyl ghost kicked off the events of the live-action film Monsters Unleashed when the suit came to life at the start of the film, even flying during the credits to set an ominous tone. I had never seen this episode though, because it just wasn't available to me, so this had been my introduction to the monster. The episode itself, however, does have some good fun worth remembering, as much of the second season does for this show, most of the episodes having shown up on this channel at some point. So let's take a look at what the OG Pterodactyl ghost had to offer us as far as chills and thrills go. This time, the gang is headed out to the canyons for a hang gliding tournament, and the boys are immediately valid imagining falling from here.
Oh, stop worrying. This is the last place in the world something weird could happen.
Now see, why would you say that? You literally personally summoned the Pterodactyl ghost. He wouldn't even be here if you had said anything else. Arriving at the Dude Ranch, they hear the screeches, and this horrific forced perspective animation of Fred pointing leads to the Pterodactyl ghost flying down. I love that they immediately call it a pterodactyl ghost. Of course it has to be the ghost of a pterodactyl and not one that somehow survived. Checks out. Thankfully it flies off for now, and Scooby shows the manager what they saw. He tells the gang this place was flooded with pterodactyls millions of years ago, and some people believe they evolved into the man-like creature they saw just before. But of course, they're long since dead.
Yeah, you know that, and we know that. But I don't think old Creepy out there knows it.
As the gang head to bed, the Pterodactyl ghost is certainly creeping. The next day, the gang prepares for Fred's flight, because of course he's good at hang gliding. Why wouldn't he be? Scooby prepares to eat half the food provided when it accidentally launches, leading him to chase it so far that he accidentally runs off the cliff with the hang glider, not even getting his food.
Hang in there, Scooby!
Title drop. As he glides through, the Pterodactyl senses a disturbance and appears also. Scoop ends up gliding right into a cave, and as the gang search for him, he's nowhere to be found. What is there is the Pterodactyl ghost, and they stumble upon some carvings that resemble it, one of which looks exactly like Scooby. They open the hidden door like in the art and find him scared but safe, and when Fred says they're staying, I love Shaggy looking into the camera like he's in the office. They start following some footprints, but the eyes of the Pterodactyl ghost are following them as well, and the gang uncover a whole stony living room. The gang split up like the footprints, the trio just being missed, while the boys make some Stone Age skateboards to get away from the ghost also over here. Some classic caveman outfits don't convince it to leave them be, while the trio start hearing some unusual modern music, Velma finding a tape cassette. But before they can consider what something like this is doing here, they hear the boys just barely escaping the ghost on their backs. Feeling relief seeing a man, they find it to be a creepy skeleton instead, running right out of its clothes. Is this ever explained? No. And that's okay, I suppose. Casually just the first real supernatural entity of the show. The Pterodactyl ghost shows up again meanwhile, and Fred pulls the boys just out of harm's way. Somehow the gang managed to get all the way back down from the cave and into the van within like 3 seconds, which I don't know how they did it, but maybe they should be in more sports. Now with time to think, they find the cassette has no label, so they take a listen. Turns out it's Elvis John's latest hit single. I don't have to explain it's a reference to Elvis and Elton John, do I? Telling the manager, he explains the cassette must have just been dropped by some teenager exploring up there. But as he leaves, they hear the same music from the cave now coming from the basement. Downstairs, the Pterodactyl awaits, and the music suddenly goes quiet. The handyman appears again, burning something outside, which the gang find to be some papers as the Pterodactyl ghost scares the boys out. It weirdly doesn't follow, and they at least save what they can of the burned remains. The gang head back up on little burrows for some reason, the ghost right on their trail, so their little burrows run right back down the trail. I love the boys picking up their burrow because it's not fast enough for them. They head into a cave where somehow the boys are trapped behind rocks, and danger-prone Daphne accidentally hits the switch to reveal a fake wall. Behind it is a whole modern recording equipment setup, which tells Fred and Velma about all they need to wrap this up. They then find some recent tire tracks, so they start preparing a roadblock to stop it when it comes back, which is right now as the headlights shine. I love this show. This is art. This is cinema. Would you believe the driver is the pterodactyl ghost? And in driving the catering truck, it left behind a bunch of cassette tapes and vinyl records. The crafty ghost by this point is already escaping on a raft, so Fred sends himself and the boys out on the hang glider to go after it. Shaggy reaches down to grab it, Scooby catches him while he slips, but then both of them end up alone with Old Green and Scaly, having to fight the rapids. Scooby's claws puncture the raft, which sends them flying, and they conveniently land the ghost right where the sheriff can take a look. Fred unmasks the pterodactyl ghost, revealing Johnny, owner of the catering truck. In reality, this was his cover for pirating music, recording it off the airwaves and selling physical copies cheaply. Much easier to do these days. The manager shows up like, damn, what's going on over here? Don't know nothing about this. But the gang tell him he's just in time.
Oh, in time for what?
For the sheriff to place you under arrest.
Arrest?
The gang explained the pirates did their work in the cave, flew their finished work to the warehouse with a hang glider, and delivered the bootlegs using the truck. But seeing the hang glider so much made people curious, so they had to invent the pterodactyl ghost to keep people away.
You have no evidence to tie me in with this?
Surprise!
Turns out the paper they were able to salvage was a receipt that ties him directly to all of this. Old Boy tries to run, but Shag and Scoob are ready for once.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
And that's hang in there, Scooby-Doo. I wouldn't say it's one of the strongest episodes. The pterodactyl ghost himself isn't exactly the most frightening Scooby villain design out there, especially in a season with some genuinely frightening and iconic designs. But he is memorable enough, and I think him being a cover for pirating bootleg music is actually pretty funny and cool as far as motives go. A big plus for this episode is actually the bonkers off-model animation. Very frequent for this particular season in general, of course, but really off the walls in ways that always stick with me in this episode especially. It's a pretty funny episode, and it doesn't drag, so it's at the lower end of the overall season, but still not a skip. I don't know that I would have made the pterodactyl ghost the opening act of Monsters Unleashed, but they obviously needed a monster that could fly around like this, so I can't fault it for that function. Let's check out those other rascals from the movie though. A Creepy Tangle in the Bermuda Triangle is the second episode of the third season of the Scooby-Doo show, airing September 16th, 1978. This one you're more likely to be familiar with at least these days, because 3 years after Monsters Unleashed, it finally hit DVD in 2007 with the rest of the season, though of course still before I would have been able to see the episode before the film, so I was just as unfamiliar as I was with the pterodactyl ghost. A few years later, under the name of Where Are You Season 3, it was also bundled in a complete series set with Where Are You, and also on the Blu-ray set. Plus you can even find the episode on 2 different compilation DVDs these days. So while it was scarce to impossible to find for a kid like me during Monsters Unleashed's prime, today you can easily get this episode anywhere. Not to mention both episodes in this video are streaming wherever you can find the Scooby-Doo show now. But like the pterodactyl ghost, I had always wondered who these freaky and unsettling little guys were until finally getting to see the episode on the complete season set DVD a few years later, and I was so excited to finally get to unlock them alongside the tar monster from the film. So if you feel the same about revisiting this episode, let's check out the OG skeleton men, those creepy one-eyed little alien freaks. The episode obviously opens in the Bermuda Triangle, which I've spoken before about in the Pirates Ahoy video as being a definite special interest of mine growing up, so that setting for sure adds to this episode for me. Check out that video for more on this spooky location. 2 men are flying through a storm when a UFO flies through and swallows up their entire aircraft. This is basically the MO for all Bermuda Triangle stories. Dr. Grimsley and his team at the Weather Eye base listening back are left wondering what could have happened. Meanwhile, for some reason, the gang are also out on the water doing what I guess you could consider dancing, maybe. Of course, they end up entering a storm, not really a safe place to be doing all that, and they hear on the radio about the plane disappearing in the very storm they're headed for. As they make it into the calm eye of the hurricane, their boat is pretty torn up, but thankfully they see a plane overhead that might save them. Before it can even spot them though, the UFO returns and eats it up too, the gang realizing this must be what happened to the other. They head back into the storm and make it to an island, while a submarine appears underwater, and we finally get a glimpse of our alien skeleton men, who unlock a door and allow their entry. The gang have the boys look for something to eat, where Scoop finds a creepy old dude, who shouts at everyone to get off the island before the skeleton men who haunt it get them, then disappearing into the fog. The boys stay behind to keep the fire going for the others to see, the trio finding an old airstrip control tower. Daphne trips on a recently used smudge pot, where they realize there's 2 whole rows of them, perhaps for the UFO to land. Unusual though for it to use something so old-fashioned. Even more odd is that all the equipment in the broken down control tower is all brand new. Daphne then sees the wheel tracks lead all the way into the mountain. Meanwhile, the boys have their first encounter with the skeleton men, who so far haven't done much, but now start chasing after Shag and Scoob, who make their way down a shaft to hide. Elsewhere, the trio follow the tracks to a rusty wheel that opens a secret door in the side of the mountain, where they find all the aircrafts that have disappeared in the storm. Back with the boys, they find the submarine of the skeleton men, who are still on their trail, so the duo try to escape on a raft as the skeletons continue to chase by water. This isn't so helpful though, as the raft sends them flying up the opposite way and falling right down. Back with the trio, Fred makes contact with the Weather Eye team waiting to hear from their aircrafts, telling them the exact situation and location, which hopefully means authorities will soon be on the way. They then find that someone is repainting the planes, which starts to make the mystery come together more, but when they go inside another room to check, the door of course shuts on them. Worse, it starts filling with water, threatening to drown them. With the boys, they find themselves in luck perhaps, having fallen safely into the submarine. Not so lucky is Scoop spotting the skeleton men on their way over again, the trio of ghouls jumping in to join them. Scoop jumps in a torpedo shaft to hide, which Shaggy bumps into, sending poor Scoop flying. Fred and the girls meanwhile suddenly get a rope from a door up top, but nobody's there when they climb to safety. They spot the sub and head over, while Shaggy runs throughout it, discovering all the men that were aboard the stolen planes tied up. Running off again, he accidentally triggers something else, which turns out to be the projector that creates the illusion of the UFO. Scooby reappears in the chaos, rushing out to save Shaggy from the skeleton men, while Fred gets an idea. As the boaty creeps catch up, Fred successfully hooks them and stops their reign of terror, dumping them appropriately in a dumpster. As the boys go to rescue the tied-up men, the scary old man from before appears, but the others calm the boys. Turns out the old man is from Navy Intelligence, the person who actually saved the trio before. This whole thing was a plot to take advantage of the Bermuda Triangle legend, the sub projecting the UFO to keep up the image, while the planes were flown to their secret base using remote control and then repainted. I don't fully get how they just remote controlled them without any way to stop it though. That doesn't really make sense and isn't explained. Bringing the skeleton men back out, they unmask them to reveal Dr. Grimsley and his team at the Weather Eye base. The good doctor was of course the one man who would always know the location of the planes and when. It makes their listing back at the start a little confusing, since they were at the base and not in the triangle actively being the skeleton men, or how the doc was talking to Fred when he was supposed to be chasing the boys either, but sure, average plot hole. The gang afterward get to head home on a fancy Navy sub, but the boys have their more preferred type of sub to eat instead. Scooby eats all of it though, and offers a worm for Shaggy to catch fish with.
Scooby-Doo!
And that's a creepy Tangle in the Bermuda Triangle. Once again, I wouldn't say it's one of the strongest episodes of the Scooby-Doo show, and the skeleton men aren't even in the episode very much. If you're coming from Monsters Unleashed, they're kind of underwhelming as far as Scooby villains go, so I've never fully understood why these base guys were chosen to bring to life over the more interesting ones. These villains for me honestly might even be forgettable if not for the movie. Their costumes are even some of the most obvious fakes of the franchise, and the episode has some pretty nasty plot holes between the control of the plane and the villain being two places at once that are hard to get past. This really might typically be one I tend to skip over when watching just my favorites sometimes. I'm surprised it's been re-released so frequently on the compilation DVDs in place of better ones. Maybe that's just me though and it's a big hit for everyone else. That's all for this particular episode though. Well, there you have it. Two of the less perhaps mainstream monsters heavily featured in Monsters Unleashed at the time that it came out. I definitely would have loved knowing more about who they were back then when I was a kid, like I knew the other classic villains, because there were so many I didn't recognize, but knew were out there, so I was obsessed with some of the ones I didn't know. The DVD menu for Monsters Unleashed had a feature where you could tour the museum and get info on some of the displayed villains, and I utilized that as much as the film itself. One of the three to not be based on an existing villain or episode that I was obsessed with the most was the mermaid. For years I kept hoping that maybe one day I would find the episode or even book she came from, just to find out years later that there wasn't anything to find. So eventually uncovering at least the skeleton men and Pterodactyl ghost felt satisfying, as far as these mysteries go. Even if the episodes maybe aren't some of the best for me personally, the skeleton men especially. I wish the museum for Monsters Unleashed was real. I would be visiting that thing constantly. Anyway, I hope you already knew about these spooky little monsters by now, but if you didn't, maybe now you do? And if you did, hopefully it was still fun to look at them again since they don't get talked about as often as some of the more popular monsters. That's all for today though. Check out some of those past videos covering Season 2 Scooby-Doo show episodes for more if you want, or whatever else suits your taste, should you choose. Bye!
I think Coolsville sucks. No, don't record that.